as far as the Jets and what they've done in the meanwhile, the big moves they made really was just Lazard at wide receiver, kind of for more. It was like Lazard for more. And when they trade more, they get the extra second round draft pick that they're going to use for the Rodgers deal. And then they also on defense traded for Chuck Clark, who will basically take over for LaMarcus Joyner. On offense, if we're looking at what this team really needs more than anything, is they have to build more young linemen, offensive linemen. I think that has to be the priority because look what happened last year when they had those injuries. It just wasn't a good situation for them. And if you have Aaron Rodgers out there, man, you better protect them. And then on defense, we talked about this quite a bit. And that's why I had Branch going to the Jets because I think the Jets need a playmaker in the back seven because C.J. Mosley doesn't give that to them anymore, and they're not getting it from any of their safeties. So they need that nickel hybrid type player, that guy that could really cause turnovers and things, and a chess piece that you can move around in defense more than anything. And they just added Quentin Jefferson on the inside, but to me, that's just more bodies. You know, they're going to want 9 or 10 rotation bodies like last year, but they still need another defensive tackle.
Yeah, definitely a backup nose tackle, maybe even someone to compete with Jefferson for that starting job, right? I love Jefferson as your number one interior guy coming off the bench, especially with the versatility he brings to the table. If you kind of peg him into one spot and he's the guy that's seeing the majority of the snaps inside, I'm a little bit more concerned there than some. I don't think he's the answer.
Well, that's sort of like the position of John Franklin Myers.
Right.
Because even though he's always looked at as a defensive end, what makes him a special player is when he moves inside on passing downs. That is why he's such an asset to their team.
Right. And I think just the other feather in the cap for this defensive front is you trust Saleh with how well he is, how developed and how experienced he is at really rotating a defensive line and getting the most out of everybody. So no matter who they bring in, if they use a pick on defensive lineman, I'm sure they will at some point. You know, that's kind of, to me, the least of their concerns is the defensive front, especially you have the all-pro and Quentin Williams up there who they're going to lock up next year or maybe even prior to the season. But
well, they had the two kids from last year who they would definitely expect to make a second move a year or two, and Michael Clemens and Jermaine Johnson. Those guys, yeah, I agree with you because they're going to need those guys. They need some more edge rushers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that comes down to Carl Lawson and Bryce Huff. I mean, what are we doing there, right? I'm a big Bryce Huff fan. Do I want him starting? Probably not, but having a guy like that rotate in on your edge is a huge asset. But Carl Lawson, considering what you're paying, considering that he's a free agent next year, that's a spot that you're going to want to start to think about, as early as the first pick. Maybe, I think they're going to go elsewhere, but it's a thought that if Lawson's not going to be in the long-term plans, you don't want to go into the next offseason saying, hey, we don't have anybody out there. Jermaine Johnson needs to step up. Michael Clemens needs to step up. And until they do it, I say this all the time this time of year, until they do it, you don't have it, right? And so and you can never have enough pass rushers, especially in this scheme. So, inside, outside, defensive front probably needs another body or two.
Yeah, because if you look at it, they're pretty much set now on the defensive backfield with the exception of adding some depth guys. Yeah. Pretty much that's it. And they only use two linebackers most of the time, and they've re-signed Quincy Williams, so they're set there. So, defensive. So if they go defensive tackle, who are they looking at with their first pick?
I mean, if you're talking about the skill set,
is there somebody that warrants that pick in the first round?
I mean, you're going to keep hearing me say AA from Northwestern. Adebawore is a solid type football player. Inside, outside. Solomon Thomas, but with much more juice, is who I think this kid can be. And remember, that guy was a top 10 pick when Saleh was there. And
he was a big disappointment, Solomon Thomas.
Yeah, he was. And right now, he's a great locker room guy.
That's all he is.
Have a good guy in your depth chart, right? But Adebawore is someone that, again, I don't think they're going here in first round. But if you're going to tell me who would they take there early, who's the guy that meets the value, the scheme, and the grade, it's Adebawore from Northwestern. Day 2, day 3, I think this is a spot where you could see Byron Young from Alabama, a guy that can play outside, can play inside. Again, you're looking for inside-out versatility. And one thing Saleh always likes is guys that uses their hands very well. And Young is probably the best handwork defensive lineman in this draft, right? He's not the best, he's not the most powerful, but in terms of techniques, those guys come out of Alabama and at the very least know how to play, right? They don't always reach their ceiling. Sometimes they get a little overrated from that program. But Byron Young is the guy to keep an eye on leading up to draft weekend for them.
And then again on offense, they can't rely on Hardman because of the fact that he's going to play kick returner. He did have an injury situation last year, but the big question is going to be, I think, once they make the move, I guess for Rodgers, because I'm kind of surprised Corey Davis is still there. To be honest with you, with the contract that he's making, it's like, are they just kind of waiting until they either try to fill in someone else and then they'll let him go? And he's like an insurance policy in case they can't either draft the right guy or sign the right guy.
They do financially. I do think it helps them to cut him after June 1st. So you could designate him as a post June 1st cut if they want to. But I think he's been on this team just in case they don't get Odell Beckham. I did think Beckham was going to wind up in New York, but that contract Baltimore gave to him, it shocked me how much money he ended up getting. And that just basically priced the Jets out. That's what I'm assuming happened.
Thank goodness.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't interested in that. I just no.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. But
they have enough
Davis
talented players in that receiver unit. Unless, again, I'm even happy with Davis, but if they can improve, I'd even be okay if they use a draft pick at some point. The first few rounds, I'm okay there. Especially, I would think slot though. That's where they probably go if they're going to use another wide receiver.
Yeah. What I like about Garrett Wilson is that the guy can line up anywhere.
Yeah.
So you really don't need to go into a draft or a free agency period saying we need a slot, we need an outside guy, because Lazard also he's lined up the slot plenty in his career as well. So they really can go in any direction they want in the draft. They can say, hey, let's just get the best receiver. I think they could use another deep threat. Just a little bit more speed to stretch the defense. This offense is going to be very much, everyone's forgetting about Breece Hall, by the way, but if you can get someone on the field to really stretch the secondary and create more space, and that's where I think Garrett Wilson does his most impact, right? Those short to intermediate route running, and then you let him do some damage after the catch, and you'll get more space to work with if you have someone that scares the defense vertically. Jalen Hyatt probably a little too rich in round one, but we've seen crazier things happen, right? If you can get a true downfield threat that really takes keeps the safeties on their heels, I think it helps out the offense as a whole.
Yeah, and if when Aaron Rodgers comes here, by the way, I would not give up yet on Denzel Mims.
Okay.
Because if Aaron Rodgers is playing quarterback, that could then get Denzel Mims into a situation where all of a sudden he's got a Hall of Fame quarterback thrown to him, and he made good progress last year. Little steps, but he needed to make any sort of positive steps after the way his career had started. But anyway, it's all going to come down to Corey Davis. The fact is, offensive line, to me, has got to be the number one position that they've got to infuse more youth there, especially to determine what they want to do with the center position, because they're talking to Ben Jones, which I think makes a lot of sense. There's no way they're going into the season with Wes Schweitzer as their starting center. I'm sorry, they're not doing it.
Yeah, Schweitzer, his best value is as a versatile interior backup, and I believe that's why they brought him in. Safety center is definitely on the table for the draft. I do think they're going to go the veteran route. Does Aaron Rodgers want to play with a rookie center? I doubt it. He wants someone up there that can just mentally and physically handle the rigors of playing that position. So, but offensive line, I agree with you. Becton is obviously the wild card, right? But we're now 3 years into his career and he's barely played any football.
He's got one more year left.
If I'm the Jets, right, I'm going into this draft acting as if he's not on the roster, right? And if you have if you're blessed with the problem that you have too many good offensive linemen, it's a great problem to have. And I believe last year you would have signed for that. Oh, we have too many good backups on our line, because I don't think there was a team in the league that was ravaged by injuries along the offensive line more than the Jets. Yeah.
And tackle would be a really good, or a tackle guard, just like we were saying with the other teams, guy that can play tackle or guard, but tackle definitely.
Yep. So if you're going to ask me where are the Jets going in round one, where should they go? I think offensive line is going to be the move with that first pick.